Good evening, and welcome to Ashland's Chronicle. Our guest tonight is Tom McClements. Did I pronounce it right?
It's close enough, Tom
Close
McClements.
enough. of Tom's Auto Party. Tom has been in business here in Ashland forever, and we're going to talk about that tonight. Tom, I know you weren't born in Ashland. Where did you come from?
I was actually born in Flemington, New Jersey, and lived most of my life on dairy farm out in New York until the age of 16, and that's when I moved to Massachusetts. A friend of mine had moved up here, and I decided to come up and see what, because I was born, like I said, born and raised on a farm, so it was much more sheltered life than,
Yeah.
Boston or Framingham. So I came up to Massachusetts, and I've been here ever since.
Framingham was like a big city, I guess, in a way.
Well, I can remember when I first came to Framingham, and like a Sunday afternoon, you could drive down the streets, and virtually there was no people. And now you go through Framingham on a Sunday, morning, and it's still the hustle and the bustle, so it's changed quite a bit over the years.
Yeah, you're right. I'd forgotten that. But I didn't know much of Framingham when it wasn't too busy, actually. Well, you came up to Framingham from a dairy farm, which is a entirely different climate. And what'd you do when you got here?
I went to work at Standard Fittings on Herbert Street in Framingham. And I worked there until just before I went into service, which I joined the Air Force in 1966. And joined the Air Force, went in the Air Force. I was in the service for 3 years, 10 months, and got out March of 1970.
March of 70.
Yeah, and that's when, a few months later, I went to work as for a body shop in Framingham. Right, and I was with that shop until 1978, when I opened Tom's Auto Body in Ashland.
Wow, 8 years.
8 years with the other facility.
And I take it that when you went to work in 1970 for the other body shop, you probably didn't know anything about auto body work, did you?
No, not as far as I was always good with my hands and mechanically inclined, right, and enjoyed working on cars, and always derived, quite a feeling of self-satisfaction, once you've done some repairs and you can stand back and see, I've done that, I did that, and it works.
Yeah, that's great.
So in '78, right across from the location where I'm located now, where the Ashland convenience store and the package store and Lunkers is. Originally, that's where I opened up in 1978. And I was there, and at that time it belonged to the Burks, and they had a dealership there. And then in 1981, across the way where Fitzy's Car Wash is now, we purchased that land. At that time, it was just a metal Quonset hut. Right? And in '81 there, and we fast outgrew that location, and we started renting space over on McGunkle Road, and that's where our spray booth originally was located. Right? And then in 1990, we purchased the location that we're at now, which is across the street up on top of the hill. Years and years ago, matter of fact, there used to be a 3-story mansion there. And out back there was carriage barns and horse barns, and over to the left there was a fish pond in the shape of a guppy.
Wow.
At one time it was we have pictures of it at the shop. It was very prestigious, very nice. And like I've been told by some of my older customers that it used to be the Perini Mansion, one of them. And the pictures that we have are from the 1800s. But then I was told, and again, this might be inaccurate, but that it was the first house in Ashland to have electricity. And sometime in the early 1920s that there was a fire and the house burnt, the majority of it. And then from that point, I don't know what happened for a period of years. Then the property, I can't remember the gentleman's name, but it was called the Model Company. And the company that was there built mock-up models for like digital and the government. And that was there for a few years. And then when I was located across the street, I think it was about 1983, 84, the property was purchased by Press Run, and they did commercial printing. Right? And then after a period of years, they decided that they would like to sell the property. And at that time, it was pretty close to 7 acres. Right? The parcel encompassed what is now the Jehovah Witness Church,
Right.
the location where I'm at, Tom's Auto Body, and the parcel over to my right, which is now the Ashland Animal Hospital. But in 1990, we purchased our property, and then about 3 years later, we purchased the adjacent parcel. I'd love to have been able to buy the whole parcel, but unfortunately, finances wouldn't allow for that.
Well, you did very well in a relatively short time, and I enjoyed going through your facility. Really great, very modern, very professional. I'm impressed.
Well, thank you very much. We've been very, very lucky. I've had a lot of good luck. My 2 sons work for me now, and my wife works for me, so it is a family-run business. Right. From the street, it doesn't look that large, actually, but the building actually goes back about 200 feet deep. We're one of the best facilitated body shops in Massachusetts. We have well in excess of $500,000 of, frame equipment, spray booths, measuring devices to measure the frames on automobiles, and then, we have the required tools to bring them back into proper specifications. And we also have our own front-end machine, a Hunter, and everything is up to date and modern. Matter of fact, we just installed a new 28-foot developable spray booth, right, which has a capacity of 1.5 million BTU, right, to bake the cars after they're painted. And now we have 2 developable booths, and that's one of the, if your booth breaks with the paints that you have to use today, right, they're very high quality paints and high grade paints, right, and you have to have a clean spraying facility. So if a spray booth breaks, you basically all of a sudden you're at a dead standstill. So that was one of the reasons that we installed a second spray booth. We also have 4 air compressors. Most shops only have 1 or 2 at the most. We have 4, right, just in case there's a backup or a breakdown. We also have our own power generator that if we lose power, we actually can power the building. We can't use all the facilities, but we can actually still maintain our production even if we did lose power.
And that's critical to you, because if you get behind schedule, I imagine you're in trouble.
You have some very unhappy customers when you get behind schedule. But with the whole claim process today, sometimes it's regimented sometimes to how fast you can proceed anyway. Right? Once a car is in an accident, you can't just go ahead and start repairs. You have to allow the insurance company time to come out and inspect that automobile. And then once you start work on that car, then if you find any additional damages that were omitted in the first appraisal or hidden damage, right, then you have to stop and call the insurance company again, and you have to allow them the grace period of at least a couple of days to come back out and re-inspect the vehicle again for the additional damages. And then once that has been done, then you can go ahead and hopefully go ahead and complete the repair process. But we have on occasion heard complaints from insurance companies, well, how come it's taking so long? And one of the examples that we use is, have you ever been to the registry? Once you get out of line at the registry, where do you go? To the back of the line.
Right.
So a lot of times when you have to stop the repairs to call the insurance appraiser back out to see it, then that will delay the repairs 2, 3, sometimes 4 days. And it also depends, too, on the availability of the parts, although we're very fortunate in this day and age, most of the parts are readily available for most automobiles.
That's great. I can remember years ago, my grandfather wanted me to apprentice at an auto body shop in the town of Reading. And at that time, when a car was damaged, they hammered it out, they smoothed it the best they could, then they would load the panels with lead and then sand them down and repaint. I doubt if you do things like that today.
Well, it's funny. It's a couple of the fallacies which would be normal because, the customers don't have to deal with it every day of the week. But years ago, yes, lead was used to repair the cars. Well, obviously, it was not really a healthy environment to be using lead because you were filing it, you were sanding it, and so the technician was ingesting. Right? So today, fillers are used, and sometimes you'll have a customer come in and say, "I don't want any Bondo on my car." Right? We don't like to use the word Bondo. We like to use the word filler. But, well, they shouldn't have bought the car of today if they didn't want fillers, because now when the cars are manufactured, there's caulkings, there's fillers, right? There is no lead used. And right now, when it comes to even to the repair of the car, we have to be very environmentally friendly. Right? That was one of the reasons for the spray booths. We have to use masks. The spray guns that we used 5 years ago are a thing of the past. Thousands and thousands of dollars worth of spray equipment we just had to throw away. You could use it at home if you were doing some hobby work, but we cannot use it in our facility. The EPA or OSHA would step on us in a second. Right? The guns we use today are called HVLP guns, which means high volume, low pressure. And the cup of the gun sits on top, and therefore it takes less air pressure to atomize the paint.
I'll be darned, the paint feeds from the top?
Yes.
Instead of sucking it up from the bottom?
Right, and that was called a siphon feed gun.
Yeah.
But it takes a lot more air to suck the paint up out of the cup than to have the cup on top of the gun with the fluid going down into the gun. Right, so again, less atomization, less contamination into the air. Right, so you can do the same job. One thing good about the guns too, though, it reduced the amount of material that you used. More material will actually end up on the surface of the automobile versus using a much higher pressure. You have more atomization. There was more, the air, the paint was, there was much more overspray.
Yeah, I can understand that.
So, and we, again, everything we do, it has to be with the, environmentally friendly, right? The antifreezes of today are much more, environmentally friendly. The fillers that we use are more environmentally friendly, but we still recommend that all our technicians wear dust masks to keep the particles of filler and stuff from getting into their lungs. But it's something we have to pay strict attention to.
That's wonderful. And the reason I say that's wonderful is because years ago, one of the things I did was worked in the Boston Navy Yard as a ship fitter. And there was no OSHA at the time. There were no safety standards whatsoever. And we all inhaled all kinds of dirt and dust and noxious fumes from the welding equipment and from the painting that went on around us as well. And the noise level, there were no ear protection. For instance, I lost part of my hearing as a result of it. And
I also am hard of hearing, and it's a result of, one, when I was in the Air Force, being around jet engines. After that, working in the body shop, and we used air tools, air hammers, and I used no ear protection, right? And all our technicians now, they're not to use a grinder without safety goggles, right? They're not to grind the metal on a car without using a mask and protection, eye protection. Again, and I try to say it to my technicians, don't take the chance, right? I'm hard of hearing now, right? And I mean, thank God, if that's the only impairment that I've gotten from all the years of being in this business, I'm pretty lucky. I said, but we all, when we're young, we're invincible, right? We're never going to get old, nothing's ever going to wear out, right? And unfortunately, that's wrong. I have found that I'm older, I'm tired. But the technicians, we're very fortunate. We've got a lot of good technicians at our facility and with the equipment that we have and stuff. And the one thing that we used to do years ago, because we didn't know better, there was R12, which was a Freon used in the air conditioning systems. Well, if there was an accident and the condenser was damaged, we would just open the valve and let the Freon escape. We didn't know any better. Years ago, back when I lived on the dairy farm out in the country, we used to take our used motor oil and pour it on the sides of the road in front of the house so that when two cars passed, there wouldn't be a cloud of dust. Right. But again, back then we didn't know better. Now to know the difference and to still not pay attention to it, that would be a travesty.
With that, we're going to take a break. And
Sounds good.
We'll take care of the problems afterwards. Okay, good. Did I screw it up? Back. Well, we ended this. We were talking about dumping oil on the roads, and let's change the subject a little bit. Yours is a family business, I notice.
Yes, originally when it was opened in 1978, it wasn't with that intent in mind. But over the years, my two boys, my oldest boy is Tommy, he's 26 years old. My younger son, Michael, is 23. And both of them work at the shop now and are very important to the business. My wife also works there. We hope, and if it's something that the boys want to do, we would like to see the business name carried on. If it's something that the boys want to do. My wife and I both worked very hard with the help of a lot of great customers and a lot of wonderful people. It wasn't just us. And, you know, I had an employee leave once, and he said, Tom, you know, you got rid of your manager a couple months ago. He said, you know, I don't think this place is going to do too well without him. And I said, he was an asset to the business while he was here. I said, he ceased to be an asset, and that's why he's no longer here. I said, it's not just Tom and or Donna that has created what we have created today as far as for Tom's Auto Body. It's Tom, Donna, Mikey, Tommy. I said, it's John, you know, it's Tony. I said, all the employees that we've had over the years, they've all contributed. All right, so it's not just us. I said, and no one person will, you know, cease to exist Tom's Auto Body. And I said, again, it's a family-run business, and there's a lot of people that contribute to the management of the facility, and a great bunch of customers. For the most part, I'm very, very fortunate. Over the years, I've met a lot of customers. I've seen customers that hate to go to work every day. They get up in the morning and they dread getting in the car to go to work because they don't like their jobs.
Most people don't.
Right, and I'm a very, very fortunate person. Right, I enjoy what I do. I get to meet a lot of nice people. I get to meet some jerks as well, but for the most part, most of my customers are wonderful people. I have a lot of fun. I hear some of the craziest stories. The only thing bad about having a job that you enjoy to this degree, it was just a couple months ago that I was 25 years old, and I don't know how I got to be 53. Right? And all of a sudden, where did the years go? Where did the time go? Right, so that's the only downside, but I think if I had a choice between the two, I'll elect to go the route that we did. I've had a lot of fun, and I enjoy it. It's great. It can be hectic at times. We're a volume shop. We're a production shop. When my boys entered into the business, one of the things that my oldest boy, Tommy, said to me, he said, Dad, you're not using me to my full potential. I've had courses in business management, psychology, and you're not using me to the full potential that you could use me. And I said, Tom, education is a very, very important factor when it comes to running a business. I said, but common sense enters into it. And I said, over the years, I said, you have to learn two important rules that I've applied to business since I've been in business. One, you treat a customer how you want to be treated. You don't like it when you go in a doctor's office or a dentist's office or a lawyer's office and you wait 15, 20, 25 minutes to be waited on. That's not very enjoyable. All right, so you always treat a customer how you'd like to be treated. And if you're having a bad day, the customer really doesn't want to hear about it. They might have compassion for you, but they have their own problems and they've just had an accident. All right, so our job is to treat them how we would like to be treated, and you better repair a customer's car how you would for one of your own family. and you never repair a car for a customer that you wouldn't repair for one of your own family. Sometimes it's better to have the car totaled than to repair. One fallacy that we hear quite frequently, but I heard it even before I got into body business. Once the frame is bent, the car is no longer any good, it's junk. No, it depends upon the degree of damage to that automobile. The cars today are unitized body construction cars, and for the most part, they're much, much, much safer than the cars of yesteryear. The cars back in the 50s and 60s were very staunch, very rigid. Their frames were very strong. So if you were in a collision, right, the abuse was done to your body inside the vehicle. These cars today are designed to crush and collapse. And it's an awful lot cheaper to either replace that automobile or to repair it than it is for you to visit the hospital. A week in intensive care, you could probably buy a brand new Lexus. So, all things considered, the cars today are much, much safer.
So glad to hear you say that. I've had so many people say to me, don't get a new car. Get an old car with a frame. Get one of the newer cars that still has a frame. And
one of my customers, matter of fact, I won't say his name, but he's an insurance agent and he lives in the area. A few years back, he was driving an Audi, and he was over in Sudbury. All right. And it was, as it turned out, he comes up over a hill and a car's coming the other way, and they have a head-on collision.
oh boy.
Wouldn't you find it hard to believe, but both of them lived on the same street in Ashland? So both these cars were traveling at about 40 miles an hour. So that's an 80-mile-an-hour impact. All right. An hour later, that gentleman was sitting in our office doing paperwork. Right? Instead of, no, he just had an 80-mile-an-hour impact, collision. Right? His car was completely totaled in the front end. But if you opened up the driver or the passenger door and looked inside the car, you virtually would not know the car had been involved in an accident. But now you also have the flip side of the coin. I don't recommend anybody running out and buying a Geo Metro. Right? That's a little small and a little, and the metal today, it is softer. It's a low carbon steel. But when I was young, you could sit on the hood of your car, the trunk of your car if you wanted to, and watch the fireworks. Today, you cannot do that. You got to even be careful if you hip check your door. Let's say you reach in the back seat and pull out a box, and you hip check the door to shut it. We've had people dent the doors.
I'll be done.
Right? But overall, the car is still a much safer automobile. Now there's reinforcements inside those doors. So who cares about the sheet metal as long as the car remains, the structural integrity remains on the motor vehicle. Unfortunately, what people don't realize today, I've been at fireworks and other functions, and I've seen parents set children on the trunk of a car or the hood of a car. We had a gentleman come in a few months ago. His girlfriend had jumped up on the hood of his Toyota pickup to sit down.
I can picture it.
Well, now instead of being a hood, it's sort of a concave dish, right? And the gentleman said, Tom, how much to repair? And I hated to say it. I said, but, you've got close to $2,000 worth of damage.
Oh boy.
And he said, just because of the hood? I said, well, first of all, it's a base coat clear coat paint, and it's a metallic paint. So not only do you have the base coat and the additive you have to mix with the base coat, but now you have the clear and the additive you have to mix with the clear coat. But the metal was so stretched that it was not a repairable hood, so that means we had to replace the hood. Well, there was $350 in painting and labor to install and refinish the hood. All right. You have $100 in materials, you have $50 for hardware. Now, the cost of the hood was $400. So now we're almost at $1,000. Well, now you have to tint and blend into the fender for color match, right? And the front park light that's in the front of the fender you have to remove rather than mask for a proper job. Well, the gentleman had decals on both sides of his truck, striping, right? Sort of a flared striping. Well, you can only buy them for the whole side. You could not buy it per panel. So we had to buy a decal kit for the left side and a decal kit for the right side. And tint and blend into each fender, which that's $250. The decals kits were $150 a piece. Right? So now, all of a sudden, just for a little mistake, or people slamming their trunks, and their golf clubs are making little outies up into their trunk.
Oh, boy.
All right? I tell people, if you walk up to, let's say, the front door of your green Chevy Malibu and it's got metallic paint, if you put a little dinghy in the center of that door, you might be able to keep the repairs confined to that. But if there's a vinyl stick-on molding, that molding has to be removed, and you don't use them over. Well, you've got rubber seals around the door handles now. You can't mask them off properly. So that means you have to take off the interior trim panel, reach in, unbolt the door handle, remove that. You've got to replace the door molding. You've got to take off your upper reveal molding. And if you have a side mirror, you also have to remove that, because if you don't, when you're spraying it, you'll have a dry residue underneath where the mirror is. Well, if you have to paint that whole door, now you got to tint and blend into the front fender and into the rear door. Well, now that vinyl molding's gone. Now those moldings have to come off, any decals or emblems. So yes, bodywork is very, very expensive today.
Wow.
Right, and it takes no time at all to write a $2,000 to $3,000 estimate. The day of $100 or $150 or a $200 repair is a thing of the past.
I had no idea.
Our material bills, the tint to mix red paint, one of the tints to mix red, right? It's $125 a quart, $500 a gallon. Our material bills used to be $7,000 a month. Our material bills far exceed $12,000 and $13,000 a month now.
Imagine that.
Right? And every car, right? Not only you're working on one area, you still have to cover the whole car. You have to mask off that automobile, because if not, you'll end up with overspray. Right? And safety always has to be the paramount thing in mind. Right? The car, you can't compromise on safety. We try to be, before a car leaves our facility, a minimum of 4 people are supposed to inspect the car. The technician that worked on it, then the front end man, then you have the car detailer, right? And he's supposed to check all the fluids and lights and everything else. Then my son, Michael, is supposed to check it, and then I'm supposed to check it. Right? We're trying to make sure, right, you've got to overlap one another, right, so that you hopefully do not, forget or overlook a procedure. Right? But we're human and we do make mistakes, but if you have a problem with our repairs, you can always come back and we're more than happy to talk with you.
We're running out of time. We got, about 1 minute to go? And I think what we're going to have to do is have you back another time, because we've got to talk about some of your hobbies, your racing, the trips all over the place.
Bungee jumping.
Bungee jumping.
Only did that once, though. Well, Jerry Bunker and I are hoping maybe this year, in March, to take a trip to Finland, to get some snowmobiling in. When I was younger, I couldn't afford to do any of this stuff. Right? Now that I can afford to do it, now I'm getting too old.
Yeah, don't break anything while you're
No, I'd like to pass on that. But I enjoyed being here. Thank you for asking me.
Oh, it was our pleasure. I just wish we had planned an hour broadcast instead of a half hour.
I have a tendency to be a gas bag.
You did very, very well. How much time do we have left, Dave? How much?
30 seconds.
30 seconds we have left. Well, you can do a lot in 30 seconds sometime. I'm not very good at it.
Now, speed, other than driving my Grand National, has never been one of my fortes. Most of my customers will tell you that. But it's nice being in the town of Ashland. The town has supported us, and we try to support the town. And, it's been an enjoyable place to live.
Yeah, and it has been for me too, and we appreciate having you here in Ashland.
Thank you.